evening, friends, and welcome to the second briefing. This, as we had mentioned earlier, will be on the forthcoming G20 summit in Antalya, Turkey, which Prime Minister Modi will be attending. I'm very proud to have with me today Dr. Arvind Panagaria, who's the Vice Chairman of the Niti Aayog, and he's also the Sherpa for the G20. With him, we have Dr. Usha Titus, who's Joint Secretary in the Department of Economic Affairs, and of course, Mr. Charanjit Singh, who's Joint Secretary, Multilateral Economic Relations. So with that, I give the floor to Dr. Arvind Panagaria.
Thank you. So the Prime Minister will be leading the Indian delegation to the 10th G20 summit in Antalya, Turkey, 15th, 16th November. He will be accompanied by senior officers from PMO, MEA, and DEA, and I'll join him for the summit as his G20 Sherpa. Assuming the G20 presidency from Australia in December 2014, Turkey had described its G20 agenda by the 3 I's: inclusiveness, implementation, and investment for growth. Growth has been generally the main focus of the G20 in almost every presidency. The G20 countries had agreed in the very beginning of the Turkish presidency that the leaders' communique to be issued at the Antalya summit would be short and focused. Turkey held the first meeting of the energy and agricultural ministers during the presidency, so the energy and agricultural ministers had never met before as a part of the G20. This is the first time this happened. Prior to that, though, there has been history, of course, of the finance ministers, trade ministers, and employment or labor ministers meeting. Another commendable initiative of the Turkish presidency was to add Women 20. So there have been various groups, B20, which is Business 20, C20, which is Civil Society 20, L20, Labor 20, T20, which is Think Tanks 20, and Youth 20. But to this, the Turkish presidency added Women 20 or W20. In addition, the G20 members, in addition to the G20 members, the summit will be attended by the leaders of Spain as permanent invitee of G20, Malaysia as ASEAN chair, Senegal as NEPAD chair, Azerbaijan as special invitee of the presidency, Zimbabwe as the AU chair, Singapore as the chair of 3G, Global Governance Group, as well as the international organizations. These international organizations have been generally part of the G20 summits always. So the heads of the international organizations, including the United Nations, IMF, the World Bank, ILO, and OECD will also be there. The summit will begin with the welcome ceremony at noon on 15th November 2015, followed by a working lunch. The remaining summit program is divided into 2 working sessions and 2 working meals, dinner on 15th November and another working lunch on 16th November 2014. The summit will conclude 2015, and the summit will conclude with a press conference by the Turkish presidency on 16th November 2015. So let's take.
Okay, Dr. Panagaria will now take questions.
Any tough ones go to my side.
Yeah. Please take the mic. No, yeah, in the front. Please identify yourself and the organization you represent.
Narendra Dhawan from the Aliyah Print Media. There will be any discussion on the BRICS on the Turkey?
So there will be a side meeting, and the Prime Minister will participate in it.
Dr. Panagaria, although this is not strictly economics oriented, the Turks have indicated that they want to focus on politics and security as part of the discussions at the G20, specifically Syria and Iraq. Do you have the Indian position on both these issues?
So broadly, this is a discussion on terrorism, and India does have a position on that. The Prime Minister has spoken on it several times. So generally, we have a shared agenda or shared view with the Turks on that.
Nayanama Basu.
Nanima from Hindu Business Line. What will be India's position on the BEPS? I understand Prime Minister has been pushing for it, base erosion, profit shifting, the G20.
No, I mean, this is one of the things that India has very actively pushed for. We continue to urge the other countries to join in, because at the end of the day, the effectiveness of BEPS does depend on how many countries join in. So it's certainly very much a part of our initiative and agenda.
Asif Saab.
SM आसिफ इन दिनों से मेरा क्वेश्चन है कि क्लाइमेट चेंज पर कोई बातचीत होगी G20 में?
Yes, well, there will be, although, you know, the big discussion is coming in COP21 starting November 30th till about December 10th or so in Paris. But climate change is certainly going to be a part of the G20 discussions, and it will also form, in some form, a part of the ultimate communique that the leaders will issue.
Venkat.
Professor, actually this is a personal question. What do you find more interesting and challenging, teaching at Columbia, working at WTO, IMF, you name it, and taking pangas with Amartya Sen, or planning for the future of 1/6 of the human race? Thank you.
I can tell you, I keep telling my wife these days that, you know, I've never had a more challenging job in my life, anywhere near it. This job is a true challenge.
One.
So, one from Rajya Sabha TV. Can you tell what are the issues that key issues that Prime Minister is going to raise in G20 meeting, and do we expect that something common outcome coming out of it?
I think that's a very open-ended question. So it could take easily half an hour for me to describe to you. So key issues, I'll tell you, because those are the key issues covered are, the first important set of issues has to do with development and climate change. The second set of issues have to do with inclusive growth, within which we will discuss, the leaders would discuss global economy, growth strategies, employment and investment strategies. Then the third set of issues relates to enhancing resilience, within which the discussion will be on financial regulation, international tax, anti-corruption, and IMF reform. And finally, there will be trade and energy. So it's fairly wide agenda. And then there is also one dinner session where terrorism and refugee crisis will be discussed.
And all over the world.
Right.
I think speaking first time.
But if you ask me for one specific area, then I can tell you.
The global economy is going through many pulls and pushes from various sides. Every country that is developing is wanting investment. What Prime Minister is going to argue before G20? Is there any regulation investment atmosphere in the world, or what Prime Minister thinks about it?
Okay. So on the growth, that is, one that, as you mentioned, he would recognize that the growth has been tepid, even though the efforts made under the auspices of G20 have led to some acceleration, but still the basic force of what has been going on in the global economy has actually led the IMF to thrice revise the growth rate downward. The Prime Minister also thinks that the G20 should create a mechanism through which countries can actually assist each other, in terms of if there are certain bottlenecks that, let's say, China faces, which the United States is in a position to help relieve, then there ought to be some sort of mechanism through the G20. So that's one of the things.
Mukesh Kaushik.
Sir, Mukesh Kaushik from UNI this side. Sir, in the last G20 summit at Sydney, there was a lot of focus on information sharing in international banking system to curb black money and flow of illegal money in international market. Is there any progress on that front, or would be that issue on the agenda?
The issue has been an ongoing one, and progress has been made. Maybe, Usha, you want to add anything to that?
On the illicit flow of money and the financial action against financing of terrorism, there is already an FATF in place, Financial Action Task Force, that is ready with its report. And it has a set of recommendations, and it has also prepared country-wise compliance with the recommendations of the countries. So this report will, in a sense, be presented at the summit.
Sir, Pooja Mehra from the Hindu newspaper this side.
Pooja.
Sir, the RBI governor has been saying for quite some time that countries across the globe should coordinate their monetary policy, and G20 could be one forum to talk about that. Is India going to press for it? Because India is one of the vulnerable countries.
Well, at the moment, at least, the coordination of monetary policy is not on the agenda. Rajiv.
During the G20 summit, Prime Minister will be having bilateral interactions with other leaders also?
Yeah, the schedule of bilateral engagements has not yet been finalized, so as and when we have that, we'll let you.
Thank you. Myself, Manoj Kumar from Reuters News Agency. So you have talked about this IMF quota reforms issue, so that will be discussed. Can you please elaborate? So what could be expected out of particularly in the communique? Thank you.
I think we'll still again make a very strong pitch that the 2010 reform be implemented, and particularly the quota reform, and in effect the countries that have not ratified, which include the United States most notably, should do so. So that certainly is going to be very much a part of the discussion and pitch by India.
Vinita Pandey.
So Vinita from the Pioneer, is India going with some specific proposals? Are we looking for some specific reforms? And two, is there anything on the petroleum pricing, reforms on petroleum pricing? Are we looking at something on that?
There is no specific on, and at that level of specificity, in the end, the G20 don't operate there. Now there is a different proposal that we have not related to this, which we have been pushing for, and that concerns the transactions costs for remittances. That's part of our development agenda. India is one of probably the largest recipient of today the remittances from abroad, and often the transactions costs of, so remitting, it costs almost close to 10% often, which is incredibly high. And India has been pushing for countries to bring this cost down. Now, latest estimates say that it's now down to about 7.5% as a result of the efforts made through G20 by India. It is also now included in the SDGs that by 2030 countries will bring it down to 3%. And that push we are still making, so we will still sort of ask for speeding up of the attainment of this objective by the G20 countries. So, given that 2030 has already been done there with 193 countries, G20 could perhaps do it sooner, maybe 2015, 2025 or 2020. On petrol pricing reforms, that's too detailed actually, I mean, on one, for example, the US has pushed a proposal where it wants countries to adopt a date for the phase out of the fossil fuel subsidies. Currently, the agreement is that countries would make an effort to do so in the medium run, where medium run is really undefined. The US was wanting a specific date. India doesn't support that.
So Panagaria, financial inclusion is one of the important priorities for India. What is going to be our formulation at the G20? In what way the declaration will reflect the emphasis on financial inclusion?
You want to take that?
Definitely the Prime Minister would highlight the fact that we have an ambitious financial inclusion program, and how we are harnessing technology to now link it to social security and national identity system. Financial inclusion, by the way, is an agenda under the G20, and as part of G20's initiative and efforts, financial inclusion and awareness have been pushed. And definitely India's achievement would be highlighted in the report of the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion, which is the working group or task force that looks into the issues of financial inclusion.
And in particular, we'll certainly highlight the Jan Dhan, the 180 million accounts, and Mudra Bank, which also effectively, from the business point of view, talks, helps finance the micro enterprises.
In the BRICS, as you know, it's last year that 2 significant initiatives were started. So the progress on these 2 initiatives, the New Development Bank and the contingent reserve arrangements, will definitely be reviewed by the leaders. And in addition, the significant components of the agenda before the G20 will also be looked at or considered by the leaders in terms of understanding positions regarding the global economy to the IMF reforms and other issues.
Because India is taking over the chairmanship of BRICS from February next year. There being no other questions, we call this press conference to a close. Thank you all.